They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but in this case, the apple rolled downhill, caught fire, and tried to burn the entire orchard down with it. Her name was Samantha Jennings, 22 years old, MBA dropout. And the only reason she was in any position of power was because her last name matched the brass plaque on the CEO's office. Mine was Bridget Lyle. I was 38, a senior operations manager at Jennings & Tate, a commercial logistics firm based in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'd been with the company since 2011, rising through the ranks from entry-level to one of the few women in upper management. I'd built my career one overworked day at a time, with spreadsheets instead of sleep, and loyalty that bordered on foolishness. I thought I was safe, respected, untouchable. I was wrong. Before we dive into this story, I have a quick favor to ask. Drop a comment below and tell me what time it is where you're watching from right now. And if this is your first time here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We drop new revenge stories regularly. Now, let's get back to the story. It was January 2023 when Samantha first walked into our offices on South Tryon Street. I remember the day clearly because it was the same week we just closed out the final quarter of last year with a historic performance. The warehouse was humming, our driver efficiency was up 23%, and I just finished presenting our annual cost savings report to the board. $2.8 million in operational improvements that I'd personally spearheaded. I was riding high. 13 years of grinding, of proving myself in a male-dominated industry, of being the first one in the office and the last one to leave. I'd earned my place at that table. That morning, I was reviewing route optimization reports when my assistant, Karen, knocked on my door. She had this look on her face, the kind you get when you're about to deliver bad news, but you're trying to sugarcoat it. "Bridget, Gerald wants to see you in the conference room. He's got company." When I walked into the room, Gerald Jennings, our CEO and founder, was standing at the head of the table, but he wasn't alone. Next to him stood a young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair, wearing what I'd later learn was a $3,000 Chanel suit to a logistics company meeting. She had her father's weak chin, but none of his business sense. "Bridget," Gerald said, his voice carrying that forced cheerfulness executives use when they're about to make your life complicated. "I'd like you to meet my daughter, Samantha. She's going to be joining our executive team as a strategic development consultant." I extended my hand. "Nice to meet you, Samantha. What's your background in logistics?" She gave me this smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Oh, I'm more of a big-picture person. I don't really get bogged down in the technical details. I'm here to bring fresh perspectives to outdated processes." The way she said outdated processes while looking directly at me should have been my first warning. But I was still naive enough to think competence mattered more than bloodlines. "Well," I said, keeping my tone professional, "I'm sure we can find ways for you to contribute. Our operations team is always open to new ideas, especially ones backed by solid data and industry knowledge." That smile faltered for just a second. Gerald jumped in quickly. "Samantha will be shadowing the senior team for the next few months. Learning the ropes, you know. I thought she could start by observing your department meetings, Bridget. Get a feel for how things work." Looking back, I realized that was the moment my professional death sentence was signed. I just didn't know it yet. The first few weeks were manageable. Samantha would show up to our Monday morning operations meetings with her iPad Pro and her designer coffee, sit in the corner, and mostly stay quiet. She'd ask the occasional question, usually something that revealed she hadn't been paying attention or didn't understand basic logistics principles. "Why don't we just tell the drivers to go faster?" she asked during one meeting about delivery time optimization. "Because," I explained patiently, "we have to follow DOT regulations for hours of service. Our drivers can only work so many hours per day, and they have mandatory rest periods. Plus, speeding tickets and accidents cost us more than the time we'd save." She'd nod like she understood, but I could see her mentally filing away my response as Bridget being difficult. The real problems started in March. That's when she began making suggestions. I was in my office one Thursday afternoon, working on our quarterly budget projections, when she knocked on my door. She didn't wait for permission to enter, just walked right in and sat down across from my desk like she owned the place. "Bridget, I've been thinking about our Charlotte to Atlanta route," she said, pulling out her tablet. "I think we're overcomplicating things. Look at this." She showed me what appeared to be a hand-drawn map with a straight line between two cities. "We could cut out all these middle stops," she continued, pointing to the distribution centers that I'd spent 3 years strategically placing. "Just go direct. Save tons of time." I stared at her drawing for a moment, trying to process what she was suggesting. "Samantha, those aren't just random stops. Those are distribution hubs. We consolidate smaller shipments there to maximize truck capacity. If we eliminated them, we'd need 3 times as many trucks to carry the same volume, and most of them would be running half-empty." "But it would be faster," she insisted. "And it would cost us about $400,000 more per quarter." She waved her hand dismissively. "We can just charge the customers more." That was the moment I realized I wasn't dealing with someone who was inexperienced. I was dealing with someone who was actively resistant to learning. But the real turning point came in April. We were touring one of our warehouse facilities in Gastonia, a routine visit I did monthly to check on operations and talk to the floor staff. Samantha insisted on coming along, claiming she wanted to understand the ground-level operations. She showed up in white jeans and heels to a warehouse. I watched as she picked her way across the loading dock, clearly disgusted by the industrial environment. Our warehouse foreman, Daniel Vargas, was giving us the tour. Daniel was a 15-year veteran, former Navy, father of 3. He knew every inch of that facility and every optimization we'd implemented over the years. "This is where we stage outbound freight," Daniel was explaining, pointing to a carefully organized section of the warehouse. "We group by route and delivery priority. Bridget redesigned this whole system back in 2019. Cut our loading time by 35%. "Why do you need so many workers?" Samantha interrupted. "Can't you just get machines to do this?" Daniel looked at me, then back at her. "Ma'am, we've got automated systems for some processes, but freight handling requires human judgment. Different cargo, different handling requirements. You can't just—" "I wasn't asking for a lecture," she snapped. "I was asking why we're paying so many people to do something a robot could do." The temperature in that warehouse seemed to drop 10 degrees. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. "Because people have families to feed, and this work requires skill and experience That's not really my concern," Samantha said, already walking away. I caught Daniel's eye and saw something I'd never seen before in 15 years of working with him. Disgust, not at the company, but at the person who was supposed to represent it. That night, I called Gerald. I told him about the warehouse visit, about Samantha's attitude toward the workers, about her suggestions that showed a fundamental misunderstanding of our business. "She's young," he said. "She'll learn, just give her time, Bridget. She's trying to find her place." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But I was starting to suspect that Samantha had already found her place, and it was going to be on top of everyone else. By late April, Samantha had stopped pretending to be learning. She'd started making demands. It began with my team. I had a solid group of 5 supervisors who reported to me, people I'd trained, mentored, and worked with for years. They were good at their jobs, loyal to the company, and they respected the chain of command. That changed when Samantha started pulling them into private meetings. "She's asking about your management style," my logistics coordinator, Bliss, told me after one such meeting. "Wants to know if we think you're open to new ideas and if we feel supported in bringing forward concerns." I felt my stomach drop. "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that you're the best manager I've ever worked for." "But Bridget," Bliss looked uncomfortable. "She's not just asking questions, she's making suggestions about how things could be more efficient if certain people weren't so set in their ways." The next week, I got an email from HR. Subject line, "Team Restructuring Proposal." Samantha had submitted a formal recommendation to reassign 3 of my supervisors to different departments. The justification was that it would create cross-functional synergies and reduce departmental silos. I read that email 3 times before I understood what was happening. She was dismantling my team, systematically. I stormed into Gerald's office without knocking. He was on a conference call, but I didn't care. "We need to talk," I said, closing the door behind me. He ended his call and looked at me with tired eyes. "Bridget, I know what this is about." "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your daughter is trying to destroy everything I've built here." She's trying to contribute, he said weakly. She has ideas. Gerald, her ideas are going to cost us millions, and now she's trying to break up my team. These are people who have been with the company for years. They know their jobs. They're good at their jobs. Maybe they'd be good at other jobs too. I stared at him. Are you serious right now? He couldn't meet my eyes. Bridget, I need you to work with her, not against her. She's going to be here for a while. That's when I knew Gerald wasn't going to protect me. He wasn't going to protect my team. He was going to sacrifice all of us to keep his daughter happy. The final straw came on a Tuesday, May 14th, 2023. I remember the date because it was the day after I'd been named Employee of the Quarter for the third time in 2 years. I had the plaque on my desk, a nice bonus in my checking account, and I was feeling pretty good about my job security. I was wrong. I was reviewing the monthly driver performance reports when my office door slammed open. No knock, no announcement, just Samantha standing in my doorway, face flushed with anger. You either get rid of Daniel or I'll destroy you. I looked up from my computer, certain I'd misheard her. I'm sorry, what? You heard me, Daniel Vargas, your warehouse foreman. Fire him. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process what was happening. Why would I fire Daniel? He's one of our best employees. Because he disrespected me. Yesterday, when I suggested we could cut warehouse staff by 40%, he told me I didn't understand the business. He questioned my authority. Samantha, Daniel has been with this company for 15 years. He knows more about warehouse operations than what? Than me. Her voice was rising. I'm an executive here. He's a warehouse worker. If he can't show proper respect, then he needs to go. I stood up, my own anger finally breaking through the professional facade I'd maintained for months. Daniel is a foreman, not a warehouse worker. He's got a team of 20 people who depend on him, and you're not an executive, you're a consultant, with no experience. Her face went white, then red. You're just like him. Stuck in your little systems, thinking you know better than everyone else. Well, I've got news for you, Bridget. Things are changing around here, and people who can't adapt are going to find themselves left behind. Is that a threat? It's a promise. You have until Friday to fire Daniel Vargas. If you don't, I'll make sure you regret it. She turned and walked out, leaving my office door open. I sat there for a long moment, heart pounding, trying to understand what had just happened. Then I did something I'd never done before in my professional career. I started documenting everything. That afternoon, I opened a new folder on my computer. I called it Insurance. I started with the emails. Every communication I'd had with or about Samantha. Every meeting invite I'd been excluded from. Every policy change she'd suggested. Every complaint from my team about her interference. Then I started recording conversations. North Carolina is a one-party consent state, which means I could legally record phone calls as long as I was part of the conversation. I started keeping my phone on record during meetings. I documented times, dates, witnesses present. The evidence piled up fast. Recordings of when Samantha tried to change our driver scheduling system without consulting the transportation department. When our fleet manager, Tom, pointed out that her changes would violate DOT regulations, she told him to find a way around the rules. Another time she proposed eliminating our union liaison position to see what happens. When I explained that we had contractual obligations to the Teamsters, she said, "Contracts can be broken." She also submitted a budget proposal that would cut our workforce by 30% while somehow increasing productivity by 40%. When I asked how she'd arrived at those numbers, she said, "It's about mindset. People work harder when they're afraid of losing their jobs." But the smoking gun came on May 28th. I was working late, trying to finish our quarterly efficiency reports, when I heard voices in the hallway. The building was mostly empty, just a few of us diehards still grinding away. I stepped out to see who was there and saw Samantha talking on her phone by the elevator. "I don't care what Daddy says," she was saying. "Bridget has to go. She's been here too long, thinks she runs the place. The old guard needs to be cleaned out." She paused, listening. "No, I can't just fire her directly. But I can make her life hell until she quits, or until she gives me a reason to recommend her termination." Another pause. "Trust me, I've got this figured out. She's already pushing back on my suggestions. All I need is one more confrontation, something I can take to HR and say she's insubordinate. Then Daddy will have to choose between his daughter and some middle-aged operations manager. My blood ran cold. I stepped back into my office and quietly closed the door, mind racing. She was planning to frame me, to create a situation where I'd look insubordinate or incompetent, then use that as justification for my termination. I needed help, and I knew exactly who to call. Michelle Foy had been our VP of Strategic Development until 6 months ago. She was brilliant, tough, and had a reputation for seeing through corporate bullshit. She'd also been forced out of the company under circumstances that, looking back, seemed suspiciously similar to what I was experiencing. I called her that night. "Bridget," she said, sounding genuinely happy to hear from me. "How are things at the old salt mine?" "Not good, Michelle. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. When you left Jennings and Tate, was Samantha involved?" There was a long pause. "Why do you ask?" "Because she's doing to me what I think she did to you." Another pause, longer this time. "Can you meet me for coffee tomorrow? There are some things you need to know." The next morning, I met Michelle at a Starbucks in South Park. She looked good, relaxed, confident. The stress lines that had been etched around her eyes during her last months at Jennings and Tate were gone. "I've been waiting for someone to call me about Samantha," she said, stirring her latte. "I knew it was just a matter of time." "Tell me what happened." She started the same way with me, sitting in on meetings, asking questions, making suggestions. At first, I thought Gerald was just trying to give her some business experience. But then she started undermining my decisions, going behind my back to my team, proposing changes that would have been disasters. "What did you do?" "I went to Gerald, multiple times. Told him she was causing problems, that she didn't understand the business. He kept making excuses, said she was young, that she'd learn. But then things escalated." Michelle leaned forward, her voice dropping. "She started spreading rumors about me, suggesting I was resistant to change, that I was holding the company back. She told Gerald I was threatened by her youth and fresh ideas." "Did you fight back?" "I tried, but Gerald. He's weak when it comes to her. He's so desperate to have her in the business, to prove she's capable, that he'll sacrifice anyone to make that happen, even people who have been loyal to him for years." I felt a chill run down my spine. So what happened? I got tired of fighting. When Redline Logistics offered me a position, I took it. Better salary, better benefits, and no nepotism bullshit to deal with. "Redline, the competitor," Michelle smiled. "The very same. And let me tell you, Bridget, they're hungry. They're looking to expand in the Southeast, and they're very interested in people with knowledge of how Jennings and Tate operates." I stared at her. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you an opportunity. But first, you need to decide if you're going to fight back or just roll over and let her destroy you." I thought about Daniel, about Bliss, about all the people who depended on me to protect them from exactly this kind of corporate politics. Over the next 2 weeks, I walked a tightrope. On one hand, I had to maintain my professional facade and continue doing my job. On the other hand, I was gathering evidence and preparing for what I knew was coming. The confrontation happened on June 3rd. I was in the break room getting coffee when Samantha walked in, looking agitated. "I need to talk to you," she said, glancing around to make sure we were alone. "What about Daniel Vargas? You still haven't fired him." I took a sip of my coffee, keeping my voice level. "Because there's no reason to fire him. He's a good employee. He's insubordinate. He's experienced, there's a difference." Her face flushed. "He questioned my authority, in front of other workers. That's unacceptable." "Samantha, you suggested we could replace half our warehouse staff with automated systems." Daniel pointed out that we don't have the infrastructure or budget for that kind of overhaul. "That's not insubordination, that's expertise. I don't care what you call it. I want him gone. And I'm not going to fire a 15-year employee because you don't like being told you're wrong." That's when she lost it. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" she hissed. "Sitting in your little office protecting your little kingdom. Well, I've got news for you, Bridget. Daddy listens to me, and I'm going to tell him exactly what kind of manager you really are." "What kind is that?" "The kind who's more loyal to the workers than to the company. The kind who puts personal relationships ahead of business decisions. The kind who's been here so long she thinks she's irreplaceable." I smiled. "You're right about one thing. I am loyal to the workers. Because they're the ones who actually make this company run." "We'll see how long that lasts," she spat and stormed out. I finished my coffee in the empty break room, then went back to my office and called Gerald. "I need to see you," I said. "We need to talk about your daughter." "Bridget, I'm in meetings all afternoon." "Make time. Because if we don't have this conversation today, I'm going to start having it with other people. People who might not be as understanding as I've been." There was a long pause, then replied, "My office. 4 o'clock." At 4 o'clock, I walked into Gerald's office with a thick manila folder under my arm. He was sitting behind his desk, looking older than his 58 years. The stress of managing his daughter's chaos was clearly taking its toll. "What's in the folder?" he asked. "Documentation, emails, meeting notes, witness statements. Everything your daughter has done since she started here." I placed the folder on his desk. "Open it." He hesitated, then opened the folder. His face went white as he read the first page. "This is," he started, then stopped. "Evidence of systematic harassment, attempted sabotage of company operations, and retaliation against employees who question her decisions. Are you aware that she's been telling people she's going to clean out the old guard? That she's been spreading rumors about my competence? That she threatened to destroy my career if I didn't fire Daniel Vargas?" Gerald's hands were shaking as he flipped through the pages. "Bridget, I had no idea." "Really? Because I've been trying to tell you for months. You chose not to listen. She's my daughter. And I'm your employee, one who's been loyal to this company for 13 years, one who's saved you millions of dollars in operational costs, one who's built a team that actually works." He looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen in his eyes before: fear. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to be a CEO instead of a father. I want you to make the right choice for the company." He closed the folder and sat back in his chair. "And if I don't? Then I'll be forced to escalate this. The Department of Labor takes whistleblower complaints very seriously. So does the EEOC. And I'm sure your board of directors would be very interested to know how nepotism is affecting company operations." Gerald stared at me for a long moment. "You're threatening me." "I'm giving you a choice. The same choice you've been forcing me to make for months. Choose the company or choose your daughter." He looked down at the folder again. "I need time to think. You have until Friday. After that, I start making phone calls." I walked out of his office knowing that I'd just declared war, but I also knew that I'd already lost. Gerald would never choose me over his daughter. He'd find a way to get rid of me while keeping her. I was right. Quick pause here. If you're still with me and enjoying the story so far, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button and drop a quick yes in the comments, plus the flag of the country you're watching from. It really helps the channel grow. And hey, if you think someone else would enjoy this story, go ahead and share it. All right, back to the story. The email came on Thursday morning. Subject line: "Meeting request urgent." I knew what it meant before I opened it. I arrived at Gerald's office to find him sitting with Jennifer Walsh, our head of HR. Jennifer wouldn't meet my eyes, never a good sign. "Bridget," Gerald said, his voice formal and careful. "Please sit down." I remained standing. "Just say it." "We're implementing some organizational changes, restructuring the operations department. Your position is being eliminated." "Eliminated or transferred to your daughter?" Jennifer finally spoke up. "The company is moving in a new direction. We need fresh perspectives in leadership roles." "Fresh perspectives?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Is that what we're calling it?" "You'll receive a full severance package," Gerald said quickly. 6 months' salary, continued health benefits, and a positive reference for future employment. "What about my team?" "They'll be reassigned." "To report to Samantha," Gerald nodded. "Among others." I looked at him for a long moment. This man I'd worked for, respected, been loyal to for 13 years. He couldn't even look at me. "You know this is wrong," I said quietly. "I know it's necessary," he replied. "For whom?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I walked out of that office with my head high, but my heart was breaking. Not for myself, I'd seen this coming. But for Daniel, for Bliss, for all the good people who were about to discover what happens when competence takes a back seat to family connections. I packed my office that afternoon. 13 years of work, of memories, of relationships, all fitting into 3 cardboard boxes. My team stopped by one to say goodbye. Some of them cried. Some of them were angry. All of them were scared. Daniel was the last to visit. He stood in my doorway, hat in his hands, looking like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. It's not your fault, I told him. I should have kept my mouth shut. No, you should have spoken up. That's what good people do. They speak up when they see something wrong. What's going to happen to us? I looked at him, this good man, this veteran who'd served his country and then served this company with equal dedication, and I felt something inside me harden. I don't know, I said, but I promise you this, she's not going to get away with it. That weekend, I did something I'd never done before. I called in sick to my own life. I spent 3 days in my apartment, eating takeout and binge-watching Netflix. I let myself grieve. I let myself be angry. I let myself feel sorry for myself. And then I got to work. Michelle had been right. Redline Logistics was hungry. They'd been trying to break into the Charlotte market for years, but Jennings and Tate had always outmaneuvered them. Now they had something they'd never had before, inside information. I met with Michelle and her boss, Samuel Greenwood, on Monday morning. Redline's offices were in a gleaming tower in uptown Charlotte, all glass and steel and ambition. "We've been following your career," Samuel said, reviewing my resume. "Michelle speaks very highly of your work." "Thank you. We're prepared to offer you a position as Director of Operations. Same responsibilities you had at Jennings and Tate, but with a 20% salary increase and equity participation." I pretended to consider it. "That's very generous." "There's more," Michelle said, sliding a folder across the table. "We're about to bid on a major contract, regional distribution for a Fortune 500 manufacturing company. The kind of contract that could establish us as a major player in the Southeast." I opened the folder. The client was Compass Industries, a company I knew well. Jennings and Tate had been courting them for months. "They're taking bids through the end of July," Samuel continued. "We've got a good proposal, but we're missing some key insights into the local market. Someone with your experience could help us refine our approach." I looked at the contract specifications. $12 million over 3 years, the biggest deal either company had ever pursued. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Help us win," Michelle said simply. I spent the next month working harder than I'd ever worked in my life. But this time, I wasn't working for Gerald Jennings or his entitled daughter. I was working for myself, for Daniel, for Bliss, for everyone who'd been collateral damage in Samantha's war against competence. I dissected every route, every cost structure, every operational detail that could give Redline an edge. I identified inefficiencies in Jennings and Tate's model that I'd never been allowed to fix. I mapped out optimization strategies that would save Compass millions while increasing service quality. But the real masterstroke came when I remembered something from my old job. Gerald had a private email account he used for confidential communications. I discovered it accidentally 2 years earlier when I was helping it troubleshoot his computer. He'd forgotten about it, but I hadn't. I still had access. I sent him a message from my personal account. Subject line, "Final documentation for your review." The message was simple. "Gerald, I thought you should see this before I submit my final report to the board. I hope you understand that I took no pleasure in documenting these events." Bridget, attached was everything. Every email, every recording, every piece of evidence I'd gathered about Samantha's behavior. But I also included something new, a detailed analysis of the financial impact of her suggestions. The warehouse automation project she'd proposed, it would have cost $2.3 million and reduced efficiency by 15%. The route changes, they would have increased fuel costs by $400,000 annually. The staff reductions, they would have violated union contracts and triggered massive penalties. I blind carbon copied the entire board of directors. The response was immediate. Within hours, I received calls from 3 board members. Within days, there were emergency meetings. Within a week, the Charlotte Business Journal was reporting on a proposed leadership changes at Jennings and Tate. But the real victory came on August 15th, when Compass Industries announced their decision. Redline Logistics had won the contract. The news hit Jennings and Tate like a freight train. Losing the Compass contract wasn't just a financial blow, it was a public humiliation. The industry press picked up the story. Competitors started circling like sharks. I was sitting in my new office at Redline when Gerald called me. "Bridget, we need to talk." "I don't think we do. Please, just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop in Myers Park, Neutral territory. He looked terrible. The stress of the past month had aged him years. His hair was grayer, his face more lined. He'd lost weight, and not in a healthy way. "The board is asking for my resignation," he said without preamble. "I'm sorry to hear that." I wasn't. "They want to know how Red Line knew so much about our operations. How they were able to undercut us so precisely." I sipped my coffee. "Maybe they're just better at what they do. Bridget, I know you helped them. I work for Red Line now. It's my job to help them. Using confidential information from your previous employer. Using my expertise and experience, which, if you'll recall, you decided you didn't value." He slumped in his chair. "I made a mistake. You made a choice just like I did. What about Samantha? What about her? The board, they're making her resignation a condition of mine. They want both of us gone." I felt a spark of satisfaction. "That must be difficult for you. She's my daughter. She's also incompetent and vindictive and cost your company millions of dollars. She's young, she can learn." "No, Gerald, she can't, because she doesn't think she needs to. She thinks she's entitled to success without earning it, and as long as people like you enable her, she'll never change." He stared into his coffee cup. "I destroyed everything, didn't I? You destroyed what you chose to destroy, your company. Your relationships, your integrity, but you saved what mattered most to you. What's that? Your daughter's feelings." I never saw Gerald again after that meeting. He resigned 2 weeks later along with Samantha. The official story was that they were pursuing other opportunities. The real story was that the board had given them a choice: leave quietly or face a very public investigation into their management practices. Samantha tried to start her own consulting firm. It lasted 6 weeks before collapsing under the weight of her own incompetence. Last I heard, she was living in Bali, posting inspirational quotes on Instagram about finding her authentic self. Gerald retreated from public life and moved to Florida. The company struggled without stable leadership, and I heard through industry contacts that he was considering selling to a private equity firm. As for me, I'm doing better than I ever did at Jennings and Tate. Better salary, better benefits, better work environment. But more importantly, I'm working for people who value competence over connections, merit over nepotism. Daniel got hired at Red Line too. So did Bliss. And Tom from the fleet management department. We're building something new here, something better. Something based on the radical idea that good work should be rewarded and bad work should have consequences. People ask me sometimes if I have any regrets, if I would have done things differently. The truth is, I regret waiting so long to fight back. I regret giving Gerald and Samantha the benefit of the doubt for months when they'd shown me exactly who they were from the beginning. I regret not protecting my team sooner. I regret not standing up for Daniel the moment Samantha first targeted him. But I don't regret the way it ended. Because here's what I learned. Loyalty is a two-way street. You can't build a career on being indispensable to people who see you as disposable. You can't protect others by sacrificing yourself to bullies. And you can't change people who don't want to change. Gerald chose his daughter over his company, his employees, and his own integrity. That was his choice to make, but the consequences of that choice didn't have to be mine to bear. The business world is full of Samantha's people who think they're entitled to success without earning it, who believe their connections matter more than their competence, who mistake cruelty for strength and manipulation for leadership. They rise to positions of power not because they're qualified, but because they're protected by people who should know better. But here's the thing about bullies. They're only as powerful as the people who enable them. And they're only as untouchable as the systems that protect them. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to deal with workplace nepotism or a toxic boss who protected their incompetent relatives? How did you handle it? Did you fight back like I did, or did you find another way? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button. And don't forget to share this video and subscribe if you haven't already. We've got more incredible revenge stories coming your way.